Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Thriving Thursdays. We're so excited to have you here. And this is a special month. It is March, which for me is always great because it means that winter is on its way out and spring and summer coming around. So I'm excited about that. I'm a summer baby all the way. But this is especially important. It not only is it Women's Month, but it's also Social Work Month. And so at InnoPsych, our goal is always, always, always to highlight mental health professionals in the area, in their fields, and really give them a platform. So I'm so excited to have Miss Melissa Healy, who is the president of the National Association of Black Social Workers with us this month, leading us off. So you're going to be setting the tone today, Melissa. So we're excited to have you. Just want to share a few updates about InnoPsych. So again, we have Melissa here. As we said, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. But some of you, if you were here last week, I'm so sorry, last week, I had my second vaccine and then I was knocked off my butt. On Thursday, I was had chills and body aches. So I had to cancel last week's Thriving Thursdays, which I was really bummed about. But the week before I premiered a video that we created at InnoPsych to help promote messages around mental health. So I'm going to show that to you again. We did some fine tuning and I wanted to share that with you. And then we'll get into the conversation with Melissa. So let me just advance my screen here. So we talked about Social Work Month, so we're so excited to have Melissa here, and I'm going to play this. And can you guys see it? Can you hear it? You can't. Well, I paused it, but okay. Can you hear? Can you hear it? No, okay. I think I realized when you try to share, you have to go out and come back in. Share sound. All right.
Hey, sis.
What's up, bro?
Hey, do you have a minute? Okay. I am going to get a little personal. I know I don't know you like that, but I have to ask.
Do you have a therapist?
I know. Therapy can be complicated. But you know what? I'm a therapist.
Psychologist.
Psychiatrist.
Mental health counselor.
Social worker.
I want you to know that even though therapy was not made for us, it doesn't mean that we can't make it work for us.
I want you to go somewhere where you can reflect.
Process and examine those wounds. Identify those triggers.
And learn new ways of coping. A place that is just for you.
You are the caregivers, the providers, the protectors. You put everyone before you.
You forget that it is difficult to pour from an empty cup, but you keep pouring anyway.
No more, okay? It's time to pour back into you.
Because you are worth it.
And you can come see a therapist even if there's nothing wrong.
In the same way that you may get an annual physical.
See a dentist.
Or get your weekly lineup.
We also need to take care of our mental health.
It is time that we step into the phenomenal beings that we are meant to be.
It's time to do more than just survive.
It's time to thrive.
Now, let me hear you say, it's my time to thrive.
It's my time to thrive.
Now go get you a therapist.
We're here for you.
We're here for us. Oops, let me Excellent. So that is a video we created last month. So we're going to continue to roll it out. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think about it? You liked?
Awesome. It is very
Awesome.
awesome.
Awesome, awesome. So we'll share it and have you guys have access to that. So again, welcome. If you're just coming in, feel free to pop your name in the chat and say where you're zooming in from. Thanks, Pamela. Today we have, again, I'll reintroduce, we have Melissa Healy from, who's the president of the National Association of Black Social Workers. And in honor of both Women's Month and Social Work Month, I'm so excited to have her here. So let's get our conversation started. So Melissa, I have to say that I have to tell you guys, my first conversation with Melissa, she had me cracking up because before she would agree to come on as an Insight guest, she was like, "Are you a member of the association?" You remember that?
Yes, I do. I definitely do. You know, we get a lot of requests. You know, people want to, use the membership for research. They want to hear what Black social workers have to say in a very kind of limited box. And I extend myself to members, to chapters. And I talk to people almost every day about what I love Black social workers, but it's important to me that who I'm talking to is vested in the community,
Yeah.
and it's important to me that the whole African concept of reciprocity, giving back, and those kind of things. So that's why it's important, because priority goes to the kinfolk who are members of our organization.
So I was like, okay, I'm not a social worker, but I'm going to sign up. So I did sign up. So I'm an official member of the Greater Boston Association of Black Social Workers. So I'm very excited. But I thought that was really cool. It was hilarious, but I thought it was really cool that you did that, because that's also a way of making sure that people are connected and literally paying their dues, right?
Yes. Kathy Lopes is a great president in the Boston area. She's doing some amazing things. So, I'm looking forward to coming to visit Boston this summer.
Awesome. And she'll actually be on next week. So that's a great primer. So tell us, we're talking about social work. We really want to elevate social work in the community. And again, part of my reason for doing these conversations, again, is to make therapy and mental health really accessible to folks. Our communities have often shifted, given the side eye to mental health, and, for good reason. But we really want to bring awareness and more understanding about what it is that we do and what kind of drives us. And also think about the pipeline, right? So how are we making sure that the generation coming up see this as a viable field as well? So tell us a little bit about kind of what got you into social work. What was that journey for you? What inspired you to become a social worker?
So I think the pipeline is a great segue for how I got into social work. So I am a second generation social worker. My dad is a 1962 graduate of Atlanta University. And so I grew up with a social worker, a change agent. We worked in the communities. We picketed racist hospitals from age 6 years old. We went into, Black communities. My father chose a Black life. We lived in Black communities. We had Black friends. We went to Black schools. He was very conscious to elevate the community and to be a part of the community. And we're not here to help the community. We are the community. So my dad, he was that kind of brother, and he taught at WashU for like 15 years. He wore dashikis in the classrooms in the 80s. He was a real revolutionary. So of course, like any child, I totally rejected that, right? I was like, no, bro, I am not social work. That is not my thing, right? I want to be a sports journalist. I love basketball. I love the community. I was the editor of my newspaper. And so I was at Xavier University, and the National Association of Black Social Workers had a conference in New Orleans, where I live now, in 1993. So, my dad was like, look, I need you to go down there, whatever NABSW wants you to do, you're going to volunteer. They need students. He was there, you're going to go, right? So I go down to the NABSW conference, and the workshop that I get assigned to is Sister Power. And Dr. Patricia Marie Merritt, who is a emeritus professor from Temple and at Stockton, she wrote this book called Sister Power about Black female leaders. So this session was an all Black female session, right?
And tell us again,
like,
yeah, wow, that was amazing. Yeah, so what was what time period?
So this was in 1993. This was in 1993. Yeah. And, we were in New Orleans, and, she's this dynamic sister, a lot of energy. So I go in, there's 100 sisters in the room, all in African garb, right? All in African garb, confident to the utmost. I'm handing out pamphlets, greeting people like I should. By the end of the workshop, I was in tears. I was so moved. It was so profound. I knew at that moment the Creator wanted me to be a social worker. I knew that the Creator said, this is what, this is what you're here to do, and I never looked back. I graduated in 94. I went to Clark Atlanta University, because of course that's my dad's alma mater, the oldest Black school of social work, celebrating 100 years in 2020, So, you hear about, white schools of social work, predominantly white institutions, but for 100 years, we have had professional schools of social work in the United States of America. Howard is 85 years old. Wow. So I just went to school at Xavier. I went to HBCUs, surrounded by these Black people who were powerful. And from that moment on, I was like, this is what the Creator wants me to do, and I'm going to be great at it. And I have not stopped striving for greatness as it requires in our code of ethics.
That's amazing. So you started off as a journalism major. Dad, you're a social worker, but that's not my life. And this one experience, this Sister Power workshop where you were not even going as a participant.
Right.
And that just changed your journey. Thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. That is so powerful. And I know you talk about being a member of NABSW for over 25 years as well. So this is kind of like your bloodstream at this point, huh?
Right. And through NABSW, we have 74 chapters across the country, but you make a lifelong connection with liberators, right? So just like I know Kathy in Boston, I know Mike in LA, and I know Sheila in Detroit and Cleveland. There's so many Black like minds, and sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes you think you're the only person in the room that gets it, right? You think you always trying to speak truth to power, getting defined stereotypes, by who you are. And then when you get to NABSW in a room with like-minded people, it's like, ooh, somebody gets me. If I don't speak, it's still gonna be heard. Somebody is speaking the truth. So over my 25-year journey, I have just made some amazing connection with lifelong leaders who we work together in order to do different things. And I will say that, the pandemic has brought us together in a different way, because quarterly, we used to go to different cities. We would do our steering committee meetings. The hallmark of NABSW is our national conference, and we would get together, and it was almost like a retreat, if you will, where you just sit in the room and you just are blessed with all of this beautiful Black, non-stereotypical, non-condescending, powerful information. So it has really been a help for my career and me personally. So I feel like it's my responsibility to be that to other young professionals as they move through this very, very racist social work field. I mean, social work, from social work education to social work practice, racism is a part of the tapestry of the field. What they teach you as practitioners, I have a real problem with evidence-based practice. The thought that because it works for white people, it works for Black people is ridiculous. That White people have not experienced 400 years of trauma. And we know as mental health practitioner, one episode of trauma can impact you for the rest of your life. So when you're talking about generational trauma, generational discrimination, internalization of white superiority, how that impacts the community. And you're talking about, I got to talk about Freud, who did work on white Australian women. It's insulting. It's insulting, but it's also penetrated through the insurance companies who really dictate what you get paid, what you can do, what progress looks like. So there are many strikes in the system that are designed to perpetuate white supremacy and to stop Black creativity and liberation in our community.
Yeah, I'm like, preach, sister. So, you know, there's so many points. I'm like, okay, let me figure out which one's the point. I really appreciate that piece around just the white supremacy that's evident in our fields, and it's the same in psychology, of course, right? And so I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to connecting more with social work. I work around social workers, and I always appreciate your training. So I love that, you know, being able to learn from other disciplines. But one of my supervisors, she actually runs a liberation health model here in the Boston area. So I've been able to partake in some of those in the past. But yeah, there's so much unlearning that I have had to do from my training. And I feel really empowered to do that unlearning. And I train students now. And so I'm really encouraging them to question it and challenge the way that we've been trained, because it doesn't work in our communities. And I had to learn that when I got into the field, and I was like, yep, this is not going to work. And so being able to be flexible and to adapt. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done for sure at our different levels of our organizations and our fields. So tell me a little bit, like, so what are you going to be doing to celebrate Social Work Month? What are some things, important events or activities that you're planning either to lead or to partake in?
So in NABSW, we are celebrating students this month. So we are showcasing students. We started off, of course, with the oldest Black school of social work, because my daddy wouldn't have it no other way. You know what I mean? He's like, you gonna talk about social work, if you don't say Clark Atlanta first, there's something wrong with it, right? So we started off talking about Clark Atlanta being the first school of social work, Black school of social work, and now we're celebrating students. So we had one of our young ladies, Kayla, who received the Steenie Jomo Williams Scholarship. We kicked it off with her. It's another young sister today. So throughout the month, we will be talking about our emerging leaders, our students, people who really need the love and encouragement to talk about, so they can see what social work really looks like. Because when you start looking, when you're in the classroom and you hear all of these paradigms, you know, and it bothers me right away when people start talking about boundaries, you know, look here, that I understand what y'all talking about. I get that, you know, we got these 55-minute paradigms that are very much, but when you really are dealing with people as a social worker, and people are in pain and they need what they need, you need to go that extra mile. It's bigger than billing. It's bigger than some of these other things. You need to make sure you provide and wraparound services to individuals to help them get through their trauma. I know that, you know, when we look at the harm reduction and in the work that I do, when you talk about housing first, you know, that as a person who experienced homelessness as a result of Hurricane Katrina, right? So here I am, you know, with two days worth of clothes, and the only time we go to Houston, Texas is to evacuate, right? So I'm like, I'm only gonna be in Texas for a couple of days, and it turns out I don't have access to my community. So at that particular time, I didn't have time, you know, I couldn't even deal with FEMA. I couldn't deal, because I had to figure out where I'm gonna lay my head, where my kids gonna be. Once I could get settled and my parents home and know that we were settled, we were in a good place, then I could start dealing with those other things around me. So sometimes in social work, in what we do, we have to deal with the most urgent need. If somebody's hungry, you got to feed them. You can't process at that time. You know, if somebody need a place, you need to try to help them find a place. And so really trying to prioritize needs and help people get their most immediate needs met, and then working with them through a longer process to see how we got here and how we can avoid this in the future.
Great. And thank you so much. And feel free, if you have questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. So Clark Atlanta, the first Black School of Social Work, is 100 years old, 101, right? 100 years old last year.
101.
101. That's amazing. I'm getting a history lesson today, people. So you talk also about housing first, right? What are the most immediate needs that people need? How do you address those first? And I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about social work is that macro level. I have some psychology folks on here, but we're so at the individual level. And that's what I really appreciate with my social work colleagues, is being able to take that step back and look at the big picture. And working, most of my work has been in a school in Boston. And so it has been that focus, like what do the students need? What are the resources that the families need access to first before we can start to address some of these longer term issues that they're presenting with. And I heard you're focusing on students for this month and highlighting students. I think that is so important. Again, we talked a little bit about the pipeline area earlier, and how it's so important to highlight and showcase, how do people get in our career? How do they stay in our career, right? Depending on where they go to school, there can be so many barriers for them. So I think that is so important. And let me know how you can support that.
I wasn't even aware of some of the my ignorance level really until this week. Sometimes I get a bunch of flyers and then somebody, racism and social work and racism. So I get this flyer and people, listen, you need to go check this out. So I go to this forum, NASW was hosting in New York, and they have these sisters from Columbia who are almost in tears talking about the racism that they're experiencing in the classroom, from professors, from colleagues, from people who are going to be, and they were traumatized by their experience. So the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, why do you pay for this? Do you know there's 100 Black schools out there? They got 50 Black schools of social work. Ain't no way I would pay to be discriminated against, So I had to get in my mindset as a two-time HBCU alumni, who my daughters, one go to Hampton, one go to Howard. Now, they both were excellent students, and I was very clear with them. You can go to any school you want to, but I'm only playing for a Black one. I will not give LSU one dime. I mean, to me, it's treasonous to support these historically racist institutions who have unapologetically, as recent as the University of Texas, people talking about taking money back because the players don't want to be out there for this historically racist song. You know what I'm saying? That to me, we have to recognize our economic power and freedom, that we do not have to pay to be discriminated against. If people are not treating you the way you want to be treated, you might have to take a trip to the South. You might have to take a trip to the Midwest, but at least you're in an environment that is respecting and supporting your community, who not only do they respect your community enough, there's something wrong if you can graduate from a school of social work and never have a professor of color. It sets up a paradigm where you don't even think you're supposed to take leadership from Black people or people of color, because you've never experienced that, right? And we, on the other hand, we go to and pay to be taught and led by people who have very little knowledge of our community. So I think that we need to be intentional about letting our students know that you have options, and that there are Black institutions that want you, that need you, and now because of the pandemic, that they are available online to assist you. Howard School of Social Work is online. So you can go to a school where some of the best practitioners have gone to online. We should encourage our students to take advantage of that and experience that.
That's amazing. So you're such a wealth of knowledge. So for those listening and those who are watching later, 50 Black schools of social work. So there's a place for you that will nurture you into the field. Love that. So one of the other things I really admire about social work is also the focus on advocacy, and really, even the social workers in Massachusetts, there's a social work day where they all go up and they advocate on the Hill. So what are some advocacy issues that you're working on this year?
So Black PAC we are a member of the Black Family Summit, and Black Family Summit is a group of 29 all Black-led organizations, Black lawyers, Black doctors, Black firefighters, Black law enforcement, Black in the military, Black social workers, Black psychologists. You know, it is a group of 29 Black professionals. And because of our connection with them, those who have expertise in those areas help us to plan an agenda, right? What we're going to support collectively, how we reach those people collectively. You know, one of the things that we are talking about now is the American Rescue Plan, right? That is out right now. And in this plan, it is promoting, you know, $1,400 for the pandemic to help people. It is also promoting Child Care Act. It is also promoting housing assistance and things of that nature that can help people through the pandemic to survive. So Black PAC has led the way with that. They're giving us information, and we are encouraging our members to reach out to their congresspersons in order to support that. And of course, we're supporting the Reparations Act. You know, Sheila Jackson Lee has talked about for several years. You know, NABSW had the pleasure of listening to her 2-3 years ago. So talk about the need to do reparations. And, you know, it's bigger than Juneteenth. You know what I mean? It is about, you know, some economic reparations for the economic freedom that other communities have that we don't have. So we advocate on that particular level. We have intimate relationships with congresspersons in our community that, you know, these are our neighbors, these are people that we know, and we want to be intentional about our support of them. So we are advocating for these things on Congress. We're participating on March 9th with Chris and other Black social work organizations, which is the second Congressional Advocacy Day. So we are working with them so we can talk to congresspersons about needs for people in the community and social work practice and education.
All right, so I want to unpack that. So the Black PAC is like those are kind of lobbyists? Is that the?
But that's exactly what they do. They promote candidates. They helped us. We did phone banking. We had over 100 NABSW members. They sent out 1 million texts in effort to get people out to vote. Instrumental in educating people about mail-in, instrumental about work in Georgia in the runoff in Georgia. So after the election, worked with Georgia and really made an easy, simple way where in minutes you can do texting to hundreds of people where you can help the community hear the voice. So we have really enjoyed their leadership, and we follow them in an effort to make impact, a collective impact on to advocate for the community on a macro level.
Okay, awesome. So that's the Black PAC. And then the Black Family Summit is this kind of 29 of the Black professional associations who are a member of that. And then they feed into the Black PAC as well. They work with the
Black PAC is one of the 29. And so the Black Summit, they're one of the 29, and they lead the way as it pertains to the 29 organizations coming together to advocate for certain things in certain areas. So it is a great partnership. It gives you an opportunity to know who to talk to know how to, so we're not individually trying to do things. It really encompasses Harambe, you know, us pulling together as a Black with one loud collective voice.
That is, I'd never heard of that. So thank you for sharing that resource. So I'll make sure I'll look them up. Do they have any conferences, or what are there other things that you guys do together?
Yeah, they do. And they promote, like a lot of their, you know, they had one summit about the vaccination, which they had some people who were pro-vaccination, some people were anti-vaccination, and getting information, right? And so as Black social workers, people always say, well, what is your stance on the vaccination? Well, as social workers, we know that it is not a one size fits all. that the best thing to do is to get the information and to make a collective decision and an individual's decision about what you're going to do. Because if you have very fragile health needs, if you have other issues, it may make a difference about what you should do. But as social workers, you know, we don't have a one size fits all. We make sure we give individualized plans based on what each individual needs and what their challenges are and their strengths.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, the vaccine, we're going to come, that's a great segue into COVID, because that definitely was one of my questions for you. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how has COVID impacted your work? I know we've talked about your leadership role. What do you do in your day-to-day?
So, and I'm a real social worker, right? So I'm a vice president of program operations at a nonprofit in Louisiana. We are a big nonprofit, and we service people all throughout the community. And basically, the programs that I manage are mental illness, homeless services for people experiencing homelessness, veterans as well, and a mental health rehab. So mental health rehab, we also have a COVID-19 contract for those who have been contacted by contact tracing. So if you've been identified by contact tracing as someone who needs to quarantine, since May, there has been over 29,000 people in the state of Louisiana who said that they needed some additional assistance to do that. They either needed food, they needed PPE, they needed medication, they needed letters from their doctor, they needed some assistance in order to be able to safely quarantine. So what we did, and all of this is via telehealth, is to really do some research finding, some community engagement to help people and families get what they need during this particular time. But you know, mental health rehab before COVID was face-to-face. And, you know, we used to do community-based services, billing Medicaid face-to-face. That was the only way that you can bill. That was the only way people can get assistance, was through face-to-face contact. But since direct face-to-face contact, but since COVID, now telehealth has really taken hold, and even audio health, because we know there's some economic disparities that stop people with low income, those, which is a requirement to be on Medicaid. They generally don't have Wi-Fi or smartphones or tablets or things of that nature. So a lot of the communication that they have is telephone communication. And where you used to do those services, and when you go in the community and you're helping people do what they need to do, they may be 1 hour or 2 hour visits. Now you have to reach people more frequently in shorter communications, where you're doing more like touch points with people, you know. And we found that that's been effective, especially during this time, because people who have issues of depression, right? People who have issues of anxiety, quarantine can be very difficult, right? It can make your situation, it can force you to isolate more than you already were isolating, right? It can increase your anxiety, because when you're going in the community, you see everybody with these masks on. It makes a difference in terms of, you don't want to let people in your house, and because you have a higher level of paranoia, because you are tuned in to all of this information, you know. And sometimes we can be overwhelmed with information. You know, I'm not a fan of CNN or Fox or MSNBC. You know, a lot of time, you know, one thing I know about being a journalist, if it bleeds, it leads. You know what I'm saying? If it brings controversy, then people want to hear it. So they are vested in fabricating or creating controversy, right? And so if you're listening to this, you can literally lose your mind just watching the news, right? Because the first 15 minutes of it is killing, dying, statistics, things of that nature, where you can be overwhelmed. And if you're watching it constantly, if you constantly watch it, this news, it really starts to overwhelm you. And even if you wasn't depressed, you end up being depressed because you're hearing all of this very negative information. So sometimes we encourage our clients, unplug, you know, turn it off. Breathe, you know, breathe, listen to some music. You know, I'm a old school hip hop fan, you know, I'm old school, and You know, my hot in my rotation right now is the Survival Kit by the Goody Mob, right? So the Goody Mob is old Goody Mob. It's that music coming back. It's helping me kind of go back to my 90s days when I was in Atlanta. And it is some encouraging music where I don't have to listen to these repeats of this data and these statistics that can be overwhelming.
That's so, you know, we're just going to jump into that right now because, you know, one of the questions was like, talk about how you have, you know, personal struggle that you've experienced and what are some things that you do to heal. I was just doing a workshop today around self-care, and I was saying how I've reconnected to music, one, just for my own health and wellness, but also like helping to teach my kids, like introduce my music that empowered and affirmed me to my children. So it is back in those 90s. I was in Mississippi in the 90s. So sounds like we've been listening to some of the same things.
No doubt. It was definitely, and you know, even, and then being in DC, connecting to the community, like when I go to DC, you know, Chuck Brown is so heavy in my rotation, right? Because Chuck Brown is DC. So if you listening to Chuck Brown, if you have Chuck Brown on your, you know, it just connects you to the community in a way that's really, really important, you know. And so I you know, I definitely switch it up. I love gospel music. I like, you know, I just like music, and it really helps to enhance and make you feel better and kind of take you in a different place. But, you know, I think I have had a few struggles, you know, personally. You know, number one, I flunked out of college, right? So when I flunked out of college, you know, my daddy was like, how, you know, he went to school, Clark Atlanta was $75 a semester, right? And it was such a privilege. In 1962, $75 a semester, right? And so he was like, how? He was the first in his family. He was the youngest of 8. He was the first in his family to go to college. He got a PhD. Now, since my daddy graduated, we have over 50 degrees since my daddy graduated from college in 62. Majority of us from HBCU, right? And so when I flunked out of college, I went back home and I had to kind of regroup. You know what I'm saying?
That was right. Not a pretty picture.
Yeah, it was not a pretty picture, you know. And so I you know, when I flunked out of college and I started working for a Black social worker, right? And she created this program for social work role models, where you bring Black role models into Black schools to introduce them to other career options. It inspired me in such a way that I really, really knew that, hey, this might be the area that I wanted to be in. So when I went back to Xavier, right, and I went back to Xavier, and then I was still majoring in communication, which I graduated in because I was almost finished, right? And so, but it really helped me to reframe myself. And Black social workers helped me to get it together. Like, look, flunking out of college is not the end of the world. That it is the beginning of a new beginning. And from that point on, when I got back in school, I never turned back, you know? So I'm always clear that and one of my personal mottos is nobody should be defined by their challenges, right? When you start defining people by their challenges, which happens in a lot of European models, that you're looking at what's wrong with people. If you can't find strength in people, you can't help them. If you're looking at somebody and you cannot find their strengths, then you need to transfer that case, because you don't have what it takes to help to build on that mental health. So, and that strength. So if you living under the bridge and you're homeless, I understand why you drink and use drugs, right? Who can sleep under the bridge with rats and roaches and stuff and fearing for their lives? So I look at, man, how have you been able to survive? That is a strength, sister. You've been able to make it under here. Oh my goodness. So I know that you have this ability that is enormous, and I am so fascinated by that. And I'm so genuine when I say it, because I understand. I mean, I had 2 babies. So if you got 5, oh my Lord, how are you able to build and still cope and make those things happen? So it's just so important to be strength-based and to be focused when you're talking to people, and let them know that even in their darkest hour, you see light coming from them. And that light is just how you want to help bring that little bit of light out to where it just is radiant, where everybody can see. It's so rewarding. You know, it is such a great opportunity to help people self-actualize, that they can find themselves, and not only find themselves, but then strive for the pinnacle and reach it. I'm grateful that somebody invested in me like that, and I try to get it back every time.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that part of your journey with us, because, you know, one of the things that I always try to emphasize to folks is that, you know, as mental professionals, you know, we've gone through stuff too, right? We're not these perfect people. We don't have it all figured out, but we use our experience as well as to connect and for empathy. So thank you for sharing that experience. While we're on that topic, what are some things that you like, that you use to cope? So you said music. So, you know, if there are other strategies that you share with the folks that you work with, and then, you know, what's your perspective about healing in communities of color? Like what are some things that will help us to heal as community, as generations, thinking about the next generation forward? What are some things you think that we should be focusing on to promote that healing?
So the campaign for NABSW right now, and, you know, during my presidency, I hope that it becomes a crusade, right, is Wellness Warriors. So our campaign is Wellness Warriors, and that just simply means to fight with all of our might to be well, as individuals, as families, as communities, as practitioners, to be financially well, spiritually well, emotionally well, that we fight for our health and our wellness in every aspect of our being, and we help each other do that. So I think when you look at that, and when you look at wellness from a whole community aspect, that when you really pursue that it is a personal endeavor, you know, like for a major struggle that I've had is weight, you know, for weight. After Katrina, I was 250 pounds, right? I mean, it's just like I was eating, I was finding comfort, and I'm not that tall. So, you know, it was just what I did in order to cope. Well, since COVID, I've lost 40 pounds, right? And so I wasn't even trying to lose 40 pounds. I just made it, I'm gonna change my diet. So I decided to be pescatarian, which is it's very easy in New Orleans to be pescatarian, right? It's not like, you know, shrimp is a dime a dozen, we got crab, people cook everything. So I switched to a pescatarian diet, and just switching my diet, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I still love the food that I eat. I still enjoy the food that I eat. But I noticed that I just started losing weight, you know, that I started losing weight. So, you know, what I do every morning, I get on the scale, and I get on the scale because that helps to guide me. But that's my personal journey. You know what I mean? Right. So I get on the scale, I'm in my safe zone, I'm good. And if I'm a little over, then I exercise more, or I'm more intentional about what I'm eating. So that is what I do. You know, my husband, he's a yoga instructor. He's an attorney. He's attorney by mandate, but he's a yoga instructor by choice, right? Like if you ask him what do you do, he's gonna say I'm a yoga instructor, right? But he has been very intentional during this pandemic period, where he took this training so he could do that on his journey to be well. So I just think, you know, when you just really focus on how you can take the best care of yourself and happy about the you that you see when you look in the mirror, because the best sermons, I promise, are in the mirror. You know, the best therapy you do is in the mirror. The best sermons you do is in the mirror. If you can get yourself together, then you are in a better shape to help other people. But if you walking by that mirror and you're not liking what you're seeing, if you ain't taking time, because I take time, I want to see what I look like. Do I look? You know, I got it together because that's where my mental health begins, what I see. And because if I see something good, I project something good.
That's so true. And I'm laughing because my friend here is calling in from Malawi. So we have a global conversation now. But I'm laughing because my husband also got into yoga. And he's trying to I still have this block towards yoga, but I'm trying to get there. but he loves it. So every morning he gets up at like 5. I don't even know what time he gets up. It's way too early for me. He gets up and he does his meditation, does his yoga thing. So it's just, it's wonderful to see a Black man embracing yoga as part of his wellness journey. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
They have to
right?
connect, because my husband really wants to connect with brothers who, that's part of his vision, is that he wants to introduce brothers into it. And I'll be honest with you, I resist it too. It's too quiet to me. The water running, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm like, why is the water running? Can somebody turn the water on? What is the waterfall about, right? It's just anti my personality. I'm engaging, he meditating. I was like, can we say something now? Can we talk right now? So no, I'm not real good at it, but I'm getting better. Pray for me. Just pray for me.
I love it. Yes, I'll make sure that we will connect them after this. But that's really cool. I'm curious, for the folks who are listening, do you have a yoga practice? What are some things that you use to cope? And what are your thoughts about what does healing look like in our communities? So I can't believe the time. You only have about 5 minutes left. So this is my last big question for you. And then if there's anything you have to share, want to share with us, that's great too. So there's been a lot of conversation about mental health pandemic as kind of the next major social problem that we're going to be facing. Coming into this, we knew that mental health professionals of color are significantly fewer, right? I think the percentages, I know for psychologists, Black psychologists are about 4%. And I think combined, if you think about BIPOC, they probably make up about 12%. What are the numbers in social work? And yeah, what do you think about, because I'm seeing a need, people are actually asking for therapists of color at InnoPsych. We have the therapists of color directory. So we're getting calls from people every day and who are looking. So do you think there's going to be a mental pandemic, or there is a mental health pandemic? And how do you think we might start to address that?
Well, I definitely think so. And I think that as a community, we have been suffering with mental health issues for a long time. I think it's important to normalize it and to make it palatable in the community. Because you ask somebody, do they have mental health issues? And they say no. But if you ask them, are you stressed out? Oh yeah, I'm stressed out. My nerves is bad. I'm buku tired, that kind of stuff. So how can we frame it in a way where it is not so negative? Because as a community, especially when we're talking about Black men and Black women, we're not keen on sharing our business, right? We are not keen on being defined in medications and things of that nature. So how can we, as practitioners, try to meet people where they are, where it's not necessarily so much about the negativity, or it's about health and wellness, that let's get your mind check, you get your car checked, right? You do an oil check, you do a tune up. And that's what I really liked about your commercial, the commercial that you had, because it is a way that, so you don't have to have a problem doing it. Like what I'm doing right now, one of my close friends, she's a therapist and she's in Hawaii, right? Well, that works perfect for me, because by the time my day is over at 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm stressed out, well, it's just 6 o'clock in Hawaii. You know what I mean? And so she's like, oh, you ain't called me for therapy today. I said, no, I didn't call you. But just to have somebody, a partner in the struggle, somebody who gets you and understand you. So I think it's important that we normalize the need to have that non-judgmental, educated support in our community, that it's okay to talk to someone, to reach out to someone, that we got brothers and sisters who are there for you, who are not there to talk about what's wrong with you, but to really, really build on what's right for you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So definitely come in. And I think that people are when they see more people who look like you and see more people who understand that they, you get them and they get you, that they will be very much more comfortable about getting that mental health checkup, if you will, that we get for our cars and our body.
Right. Yeah. I love that you're saying like, what's right with you, right? I love that. So that might come up somewhere. But yeah, I remember when I started training, and I think I mentioned I did my graduate work in Mississippi, and I'd walk out to get my client, and like the clients would just be beaming because they did not expect this Black woman to walk out to be their therapist. So the joy, I think that people, that they just kind of relax when they see people who look like them. So, and it's about choice, right? There's some people who'd rather not see a person of color because whatever hangups they may have, but I think it's having that choice. So with the pandemic, right, like we have this significant dearth of therapists of color. What are some suggestions you have about how do we kind of meet this emerging need that's coming out of COVID, but had also been there prior?
I think doing some reframing, doing some outreach, going where people are, and they need help, and offering that help. It's a little more grassroots, we often wait for people to come to us, how do we go to them? How do we meet people where they are? We know people are grieving. We know people are losing their jobs. We know people are stressed out because their children are they working right next to their children while they're trying to do their job. I mean, some of my practitioners, here they are doing mental health rehab, and then they are really stressed out because their 5-year-old and 8-year-old having struggle logging on with one computer and things of that nature. So really not waiting people to come to us, going to the community and saying, hey, going to a church, say, hey, look, we're here for you. Being on the agenda, going to the student, HBCU students and talking to them, saying, hey, we here for you. We know that you need this support, and we want you to know that we want to help you continue to be strong and reach out to us and try to really meet people where they are.
Awesome, thank you. Meet people where they are. So our last question from Kyla, I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but she asks, how do we integrate spirituality in the clinical practice? Kind of just really picking up on your point. And is it relevant for Black clients? And some of the work that I've been doing, like I did last year and we'll do again this year, is really about connecting with the Black church and really helping the clergy to think about how do they integrate conversations about mental health with their congregation. Because you have a lot of churches who kind of, I said malign mental health, right? Like, that it's not acceptable, right? They encourage them to pray more. And so that starts to feel, for many people, is like, well, like there's something wrong with me if I'm not praying enough, right? And I still have this issue. So I don't know, what might you add to this conversation about spirituality and mental health?
I do think you have to start with the leaders. There are some leaders who really get it. And I think that when they're looking at mental health, they're looking at the European models, and they're looking at the European models, and that is what's defining mental health work. When you start talking to preachers about grief therapy, they get it. You know what I mean? They get that, when, my father died in 2014. It is still with me every day. You know what I'm saying? We have people who are watching people die before them, bunches of people. A coworker of mine, age 40, she died, and so right now my whole staff is hurting. How do we deal with that, and how do we meet people? So it's really an education piece. And I do think that in a lot of ways, if you ignore spirituality, you will lose the respect of your clients if that's important to them. You know what I'm saying? If you hear that is a value to somebody, if prayer is a value, if their religion is a value, then that is something that you have to build on, and you have to incorporate in their practice to say that what we're doing is not counter to that. You pray and you still take blood pressure medication. You pray and you still take insulin, right? So we're just trying to help a different part of you be well. And I think people can accept that. But I think when you ignore the spiritual piece, because it's so much a part of us, either directly or indirectly, then sometimes you lose credibility because they think that you're not acknowledging that piece of them. So I think it's important to to explore.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I know we have to wrap up, but this has been a wonderful conversation, Melissa. We'll have to figure out other ways to continue. But thank you for all of your wonderful comments and gems. And there's so many pieces. When I do my wrap up, my recap, I'm just be dropping some of the gems that you talked about. But like, really, I heard about strength.
I do have to say, Dr. Jackman.
Go ahead.
If you black, you can join NABSW if you committed to the code of ethics, right? So don't think you don't have, I'm not a social worker. We are about Black change agents. We are about liberation. So if you read our code of ethics that say Black 20 times in it, and that is your primary focus toward liberation, then you can be a member of the National Association of Black Social Workers. And we want your expertise to join our 74 chapters across the country. And I wouldn't be the 14th president of NABSW, a 50-year organization, if I didn't say that.
And I'm going to end on that note. And for some of you who came in, that was Melissa. The requirement to come on the show today was that I join, and I joined. I'm now an ASB National Association of Black Social Workers member, and I'm really excited to learn and to connect with a different discipline in a different way. But this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for everything. And I look forward to connecting to you offline. And thanks for everyone who was here. See you guys next week. We'll be talking to Kathy Lopes, who is the president of the Greater Boston Association of Black Social Workers. So make sure that you give your social workers in your community props, hello, and again, happy Women's Month as well. Thank you.